A sudden flash of blinding light shattered my consciousness before the smell of cold iron filled my senses. Looking down at my hands, I realized they were no longer the calloused fingers of a hardcore PC gamer. I staggered toward a massive full-length mirror resting against the mahogany wardrobe to confirm my fears. Staring back at me was the sharp, aristocratic face of Julian Kryhart Placen, the ultimate mid-game villain from my favorite dark fantasy RPG. This was the character destined to be brutally executed by the hero in Chapter 3 of the main storyline. A sudden sharp chime echoed inside my brain as a translucent blue status window materialized in midair. The system message confirmed my terrible reality, displaying Julian's current abysmal reputation and fatal destiny. Before I could process the system metrics, a loud, violent slam shook the heavy wooden doors of my chambers. A frantic servant burst inside, screaming that a vengeful challenger was waiting for me at the academy courtyard. Realizing that showing any weakness would mean immediate death in this cutthroat world, I forced a cold smirk onto my face. I donned the black noble cape and fastened the silver crest of the Placen family tightly across my chest. Walking down the long, echoing stone corridors, every student I passed shrank back in sheer terror. Internally, my mind was screaming in absolute panic, wondering how I was going to survive a real sword fight. I stepped out into the massive circular stone arena where hundreds of students had gathered to watch my downfall. Standing in the center of the arena was a heavily armored senior student, aggressively swinging a massive steel broadsword. I stood perfectly still, resting my hand casually on the pommel of my unsheathed gemstone blade. "You dare challenge a Placen with such a clumsy stance?" I said, forcing Julian's signature condescending tone. Infuriated by my words, the massive knight roared and charged forward, splitting the ground beneath his heavy boots. Relying strictly on my deep knowledge of the game's frame data, I waited until the exact microsecond before his strike landed. With a fluid, minimal movement, I pivoted on my heel, letting the heavy broadsword crash harmlessly into the dirt beside me. Without drawing my weapon, I tapped his armored shoulder lightly with my sheathed blade to completely destroy his composure. A crimson aura of raw malice erupted from my body, mimicking the terrifying presence of the original villain. The challenger froze instantly, his eyes wide with horror as he collapsed to his knees from the psychological weight. "Yield," I whispered coldly, looking down at him like an insignificant insect. The crowd erupted into a stunned silence, completely bewildered by Julian's effortless victory. Suddenly, an elder professor with a menacing expression stepped onto the balcony, holding a golden scroll. He announced that due to recent anomalies, my admissions test had been altered into a special high-tier trial. I realized instantly that this was a rigged trap orchestrated by Julian's manipulative family to eliminate him quietly. Instead of backing down, I let out a dramatic, echoing laugh that filled the entire Colosseum. "Bring forth whatever pathetic trial you have prepared," I declared, gesturing grandly toward the main gate. The massive iron portcullis began to grind upward, revealing a pitch-black tunnel beneath the academy. A foul, suffocating stench of corruption and dark magic wafted into the arena, causing the nearby grass to wither instantly. According to my knowledge of the game lore, they were unleashing a creature meant for high-level raid parties. Heavy, thunderous footsteps began to echo from the depths of the tunnel, shaking the entire arena floor. I slowly drew my gemstone blade, the pristine steel reflecting the bright sunlight with a dangerous edge. A faint, shimmering blue light began to pulse along the runes of the weapon, responding to my latent mana. I stood completely ready to face whatever execution method my treacherous family had devised for me. From the absolute darkness of the gate, two massive, glowing red eyes snapped open, locking onto me with pure hatred. The sheer pressure emanating from the beast made it clear that a single mistake would result in my immediate demise. As a terrifying, colossal silhouette began to cross the threshold into the light, I realized the real battle for survival had just begun. The giant shadow loomed over the training grounds as my mind raced to remember the demon's specific attack patterns from the game guide. Acting on sheer instinct, I forced my lips into a cold, mocking smirk to maintain my terrifying noble facade before the watching crowd. Inside my head, however, I was screaming at the top of my lungs because a single misstep would mean an immediate brutal demise. I stepped forward with slow, deliberate steps, letting the heels of my polished boots click rhythmically against the stone tiles. The massive shadow turned out to be a decoy magical construct, which shattered into thousands of harmless glittering shards at my feet. The Academy proctors gasped in absolute shock, completely fooled by my effortless display of psychological dominance over the illusion. Taking advantage of my newly cemented reputation, I demanded command over the upcoming Imperial expedition to the border regions. The council members reluctantly signed the official deployment orders, completely unaware that I was actively fleeing the capital's assassination plots. Within hours, our armored Imperial carriage was rattling along the muddy northern road toward the isolated border town of Oakhaven. Looking out the carriage window, I unclasped my family's heirloom weapon, analyzing the intricate runes carved into its pristine hilt. According to the lore of the game, this particular gemstone blade contained a hidden, legendary property called Blue Moonlight. No matter how hard I channeled my current mana reserves into the hilt, the stubborn gemstone refused to ignite with its true power. Suddenly, the carriage slammed to a violent halt, throwing me forward against the ornate wooden partition wall. Piercing screams of pure terror echoed from the front of our convoy, mixing with the sickening sound of tearing metal. I smoothly kicked the damaged carriage door open, stepping out into the chilly evening air with an air of absolute composure. The border town of Oakhaven was already half destroyed, with thick black smoke billowing columns into the darkening sky. Standing in the center of the destruction was a massive 7-foot-tall demon sporting 2 jagged obsidian horns on its forehead. The Imperial soldiers under my command instantly lost their nerve, dropping their spears and backing away in sheer panic. "Stand down, you utterly pathetic cowards," I drawled loudly, making sure my mocking voice carried across the entire battlefield. My heart was beating so incredibly fast against my ribs that I genuinely worried the demon would hear it over the roar of the flames. The 2-horned demon noticed my approach, locking its glowing yellow eyes onto my silver hair with an angry guttural hiss. I drew my gemstone blade with a slow, deliberate ring of steel, pointing the tip directly at the monster's grotesque chest. I recalled the precise mechanics from Chapter 3 of the game guide, noting that this specific boss always swings its left claw first. Relying completely on that gaming memory, I cleanly ducked under the massive, sweeping left claw just an inch before it cleaved my head off. The force of the monster's missed attack completely shattered a solid stone well behind me, sending heavy debris flying through the air. I instantly spun around to deliver a counterattack, but my regular steel slash barely left a shallow scratch on its thick hide. The demon barked out a guttural laugh, completely unaffected by my physical strike as it raised its second arm for a crushing blow. Realizing that regular physical attacks were utterly useless, I focused every ounce of my desperation into the sword's gemstone pommel. To my absolute amazement, the sapphire gemstone finally responded to my heightened emotions, unlocking the dormant Blue Moonlight property within. The entire burning village square was suddenly washed in a magnificent cold blue light that completely neutralized the fiery orange glow. "Your primitive existence ends right here, you miserable beast," I declared, my voice echoing with an unnatural, chilling resonance. With a swift, blinding horizontal slash, I launched a crescent wave of pure moonlight energy directly toward the charging demon. The 2-horned demon tried to block the magical attack with its massive forearms, its yellow eyes wide with sudden, absolute panic. The blue moonlight arc sliced through the demon's impenetrable flesh effortlessly, severing both its arms and its obsidian horns simultaneously. The colossal monster collapsed heavily onto the muddy ground, dissolving into a harmless puddle of black ash before my very eyes. The surrounding Imperial soldiers and surviving villagers dropped to their knees, cheering my name in a state of absolute reverent awe. I quickly sheathed my gemstone blade to hide the fact that my hands were violently trembling from total mana depletion. A mediocre warm-up at best, I announced smoothly to the crowd, maintaining my edgy villain persona perfectly until the very end. As I walked back to the command tent to rest, my eyes caught a strange, glowing purple insignia branded onto the demon's discarded horn. It was the forbidden mark of the Dawn Society cult, proving that this monster attack wasn't a random disaster, but a carefully engineered ambush. Before I could even process this dark discovery, a cold, mocking laughter began to echo from the shadows of my own home capital, miles away. Before I could even process this dark discovery, a cold, mocking laughter began to echo from the shadows of my own home capital miles away. My mind raced as I realized the sinister Dawn Society cult had already penetrated the inner sanctum of the Placen family estate. Internally, I was panicking at the breach, but I forced Julian's signature smug smirk onto my face to maintain complete control. Suddenly, the heavy wooden doors at the end of the corridor exploded outward in a violent shower of sharp splinters. From the swirling cloud of debris stepped a towering, grotesque abomination pulsating with dark purple veins. The creature hissed my name through a distorted jaw, claiming the Dawn Society had come to collect my arrogant soul. I casually drew my brilliant gemstone blade, letting the cool blue moonlight energy hum softly against the surrounding darkness. The mutated monster lunged forward with terrifying speed, its massive claws tearing deep grooves into the marble floor. Utilizing my extensive in-game knowledge, I recognized this specific beast's clumsy attack pattern instantly. I sidestepped the lethal strike by a mere fraction of an inch, the wind pressure whipping my dark cape violently. The monster roared in frustration as its heavy claws missed completely and buried themselves deep into a stone column. I spun my sword effortlessly, mocking the creature's slow reaction time with a cold, ringing laugh. However, the cultist within the beast laughed back, revealing that this entire ambush was merely a distraction. A sudden realization hit me as I noticed the faint sound of panicked screaming coming from the lower courtyard. My treacherous younger brother Joshua had clearly allied with these zealots to usurp my rightful position tonight. The abomination suddenly ripped its claws free and unleashed a dense wave of toxic black sludge across the room. I raised my left hand, instantly deploying a perfect geometric mana shield that deflected the acid effortlessly. It was time to stop playing around and show this trash the true disparity in our absolute strength. I reached deep into Julian's core, forcing the dormant forbidden magical crests to unlock all at once. A magnificent, terrifying scarlet aura erupted from my body, instantly incinerating the toxic mist in the air. The monster shrank back in genuine primal fear, its multiple eyes widening at the suffocating pressure. I asked the creature if it honestly believed a few cheap parlor tricks could ever defeat a true Lord of Placen. With a single swift motion, I coated my crystal blade in the volatile, boiling scarlet energy. I vanished from my spot in a burst of speed, leaving behind nothing but a cracked floor and a red afterimage. Before the abomination could even track my movement, I reappeared directly above its massive, grotesque head. I brought the blade down in a flawless vertical slash, executing the monster with absolute brutal precision. The two halves of the mutant dissolved into harmless ash before they even hit the ruined marble floor. I flicked my sword clean of imaginary debris, turning my attention toward the quiet courtyard below. Down below, my younger brother Joshua was standing among a small group of surviving rogue cultists. His face drained of all color the moment he saw me standing completely unharmed on the balcony. I leaped down from the high balcony, landing effortlessly in the center of the courtyard without making a sound. The remaining cultists panicked and rushed me all at once, brandishing cursed daggers. I unleashed a sweeping wave of blue moonlight energy, instantly neutralizing the attackers in a single fluid rotation. With the cultists completely eliminated, only my trembling younger brother remained standing before me. I dragged the tip of my gemstone blade along the cobblestones, creating a terrifying metallic screeching sound. Joshua collapsed to his knees, begging for mercy and claiming he was forced into this betrayal by the cult. I placed the cold, sharp edge of my blade directly underneath his trembling chin, forcing him to look at me. I whispered that a true Placen noble never makes excuses for failure, nor do they survive a second act of treason. Instead of killing him, I forced Joshua to sign a magical blood contract, binding his very soul to my absolute command forever. With the Dawn Society crushed and my brother successfully brought to heel, my absolute dominance over this world was finally secured.